because that is going to be Dusty May. That is going to be the number 9 seed, Florida Atlantic Owls TO. They knocked off Kansas State. They knocked off Marquise Noel. They won 79-76 in Madison Square Garden. Florida Atlantic went into the Garden and knocked off Kansas State to advance to the Final Four. How about that?
By committee. You remember before the tournament started, everybody was wondering, like, please, guys, don't give this team an 8-9 game.
Yeah.
Please, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. They do it. They're everybody's talking about collectives now. I'm just going to call that team the Florida Atlantic Collective because it's so well balanced and how they attack you. Golden on the inside was very good today. He was very good. And I think one thing you can take away from this team is you have a bunch of guys that are unselfish, one. Two, I think your big man needs to be your third or fourth option on a championship team, if that makes sense, because that's what he is. He's spectacular in my mind. He plays his role well. He's huge. Another thing, he's not just big for that league. He's big, period. And just the by-committee approach is the thing that's most fun about this team.
Mm-hmm. You know, they couldn't let, we talked about it, obviously, Noel and Keontae Johnson both go off.
Right.
They didn't. Noel went off. He had 30. Keontae Johnson had 9 points, and he fouled out fairly early in the second half. So I think that was the key. That was something that other teams have been unable to do so far in the NCAA tournament. But again, like you said, like collectively, that's what this team does, right? Defensively, they're very good, and offensively, they're balanced for the most part. They're balanced. They're not relying on one or two guys, and Kansas State was. And I think ultimately, the other thing is they don't get rattled. They do not get rattled. They've been down before in this tournament, and they come back today, right? They're down. We think they're kind of, going to lose late in that second half, and all of a sudden they go on, what was it, a 15-1 run?
Right.
To solidly
they were
take
down
the lead.
57-50, and they went on a 15-1 run over the course of 5 minutes to more or less put that game away and put that game to bed. I know that Kansas State made a little bit of a run at the end. What makes this team so dangerous to me, T.O., is that with a team like Kansas State, you have to have both your dudes go off. You have to have them both go off. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to beat good teams. We saw that tonight. With Florida Atlantic, you never really know where it's going to come from. Right? How difficult does that make them to prepare for?
Incredibly difficult, especially when it comes down to the last 2 minutes. I always like to think you need to have a pecking order in the last minute and a half. I'm not really sure this team has that. But at the same time, like we talked about their collective production, and that's kind of what we were emphasizing there. But I think their collective toughness, too. They played 9 guys. Almost every one of them had 2 rebounds or more. Like, it's not just scoring points. It's not just passing the ball. It's a bunch of similarly skilled guys that can make things happen for somebody else. And whenever that collective toughness is there to the point at which was today, too. I mean, Marquise Noel, like, what a tournament.
Killer, man.
He's a killer. He's a killer. And they were still able to hold him down just as much by throwing different bodies at him.
Enough, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. But
They didn't hold him down at all.
Right. Well,
all they
what
did was
what
on the
was he
last
from the field?
He was 10 of 21.
Yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play college basketball pick'em, where you can get a little extra sweat during March Madness and win real cash prizes simply by picking player stats in this weekend's games. In pick'em, all you do is predict whether a player will go higher or lower on Underdog's projected totals, whether that's points, rebounds, whatever. For example, if you're like me and you think Zach Edey is going to go nuts in this tournament, take higher on his points projection, add up to 4 more picks, and if you hit them all, you can win 20 times your money on a single game. Underdog's slick mobile app is easy enough that dummies like Jeff Goodman have even figured it out. So go to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app and use the code FIELD, F-I-E-L-D, and Underdog will match your deposit up to $100. Now is the time to get in on the madness. So remember, UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code FIELD.
Yeah. Well, he had 30 points. He had 30 points and 12 assists.
No,
they didn't hold him down.
8 of 21.
What they did was on that final possession was they got the ball out of his hands, and that was the first time.
I can't believe he gave it up.
That was like the first time in the second half.
And then he drove in before that and tried kind of it was again, that's the hard part. Right?
I wonder if
He's
they were
5'7".
going to. Yeah, I wonder if they were going to try to let him get rid of it and then catch a flare screen on the backside. That was the only reason I could have seen him giving
No,
that ball
because
up.
Masood was getting ready to fire that thing.
He
And
was getting
too
ready to
deep.
fire it from
And he
where the
was too
coach's
deep.
box was.
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
was too
like,
deep.
yeah, it was tough
All right,
last play.
so
Yeah,
here's
I
my
don't take the
question.
ball out of Noel's hands.
No, I don't
Here's
know.
my question for you guys. Where does this sit in terms of all-time greatest Final Four Cinderellas? Because you have VCU, I get it.
Yeah.
You have George Mason.
That was a great run.
But those are two good programs. Those are two pretty good programs that are well resourced, right? I mean, VCU's got great resources. George Mason's got pretty good resources. This program does not have resources. Maybe other than, I think it's like UTSA and Florida International. They're the worst in the league in terms of budget and resources.
Really?
Their arena needs major upgrades. Major upgrades. I was just in it a couple months ago, and they're going to do it now.
There's some money coming in now, I
Now they'll be
guarantee
okay. There'll be some money for upgrades. There'll be some money for Dusty May and his.
There better be some money for NIL too, because we're going to talk about that in a second. But
Where
I
does it sit? Like yeah.
to me, the greatest Cinderella run of all time is, this is going to sound a little crazy, but it's Villanova in 1985, because Villanova actually won the title.
Right.
Right. And then once you get beyond, then once you
Well, they had to
actually-
beat Georgetown.
Yeah, true story. I was born during that game when Villanova beat Georgetown. How about that? My dad got in a lot of trouble for running out of the delivery room to go watch the game too many times.
Yeah.
I think I was built for college basketball.
That's
huh?
right. That's
To me, that's the greatest Cinderella run of all time. But once you get beyond that, like, I think VCU going first four to Final Four, because you got to win 5 games instead of just 4, is one that really stands out to me.
It's just this one's different, is
It's
all I'm
different.
saying.
And-
It's
but here's-
almost a better coaching job, because you know what Dusty May did? All season, he was the only one bid team that got in at large. That was in position to get in at large.
Right.
Right? That was it. Charleston fell off. Right? FAU stayed there. And now what they're doing in the tournament, proving that that was not a fluke.
Yep.
Like the VCU thing, they barely got in, Rob.
They shouldn't have gotten in.
Correct.
When George Mason got in,
Yep.
they were the team that everyone was like, how did they get in?
That's what I'm saying. FAU
didn't-
earned it.
Yes.
They did it in the regular season, and now they're doing it again. They're showing that, you know what, this thing isn't fluky at all.
And
at all.
what they're showing is that maybe we should put a little bit of respect on the name of these mid majors that have great seasons. Just because you go out and you win 30 games against teams that aren't necessarily like, the big high majors, right? And maybe you lose in your conference tournament. What this is proving is we gotta believe in those teams.
Yeah.
If you put together a season like they had, give them a bid.
What's also kind of interesting is we talk so much about the extra year of eligibility and how it's spread out the talent. This is still a young team that could all come back next year.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's-
and without knowing, for somebody without knowing the resources, Jeff, like you do, obviously, like whenever you bring that into the equation as well, just I'm not going to say lack of support. I guess that would be lack of support.
It is lack of support.
So, like,
so far.
that changes some
I
things.
mean, Matt McCall, Field of 68, and we should have him on talking about this soon.
Yeah.
He was an assistant there 15 years ago for Mike Jarvis. He went in the building this year to call a game, and he said it was basically like going back in time. Nothing had changed in 15 years.
Yeah. So you mentioned the resources for NIL. You mentioned kids potentially having I think I got that backwards, but whatever.
That's fine, yeah.
Dusty May was asked in the post game about the transfer portal and about finding a way to keep this roster together. And this is what he said: they're getting recruited now. They've been recruited throughout this tournament, which is wild when you think about
It's disgusting.
Yes.
It's disgusting. And I thought about doing this, and I'd like to do this. If I get my hands on any of those text messages or who's doing it, I can't wait to put it out there nationally. Like, I will put it out there in 2 seconds because it is absolutely disgusting.
During the season.
While you're at an NCAA tournament run?
Exactly.
Give me a break. Like, that's bullshit.
It is.